This is an orthokeratology case where the patient started out as a lower myope and was started in ortho-K for the purposes of myopia control. Over the past 3 years, however, the patients continued to progress fairly rapidly in myopia, and the question was whether there's anything we can do in terms of lens design to help slow that progression. And as you know, the most commonly held theory behind how ortho-K slows down progression of myopia is by inducing myopic defocus on the perimacular retina. And that's done through the reverse curve, where we're steepening the curvature of the cornea so that light rays focus anterior to the retina and inhibit axial elongation. So this is the first set of lenses that the patient started with, and they look pretty standard for a low myope. And we can see that with a lower myope, here under the reverse curve, we're not really steepening the cornea very much because we don't need to. We don't need to mold that much tissue to correct the lower amount of myopia that's present. So in a sense, lower myopia, where we aim to hold our patients, in a way works against us because we normally don't get a post-work topography that looks, for example, like this, where there's a very pronounced and defined reverse curve where light's being focused before it reaches the retina. That said, I think there's one key change that can be made, and that's just to move the OZ and the IC closer. So if we shift everything closer, there's the potential that, especially with older kids who might be getting close to driving age, that they get some glare or halos appreciable at nighttime. But introducing more of this plus power into the pupil, I think, can help slow down progression of the myopia. So I'm going to bring up the most recent lenses. And here you can see the much more pronounced reverse curve, but that's because the patient's much more myopic now, and we're correcting a fair amount more refractive error. I believe we're at a 6.2 and 6.8, which is a pretty standard placement for OZ and IC. And what I like to do for potentially progressive myopic patients is to shift this all the way down to 5.6 and 6.2. So we can maintain the same power of 1.31. We're a little bit over, so we'll decrease this. And then anytime I change topo demand or power, I go into 25% mode for a freeform lens. And if we go around to the different axes, you'll notice that sometimes we get powers that are a little bit off. For example, this one we can bring down a little bit. And this one we can bring down a fair amount. So now we're more uniform in terms of power. A little below, and I think in 100% mode, I'll bring everything up one. With some patients, I'll go even a little bit smaller than 5.6, but you do have to be careful. I always warn patients, or at least inform them, that with this design change, they may notice that their nighttime vision seems a little bit more hazy than it used to be. And I say it, but most of the time, kids, they don't notice it at all. But just in case, I do like to make them aware of that possibility in the beginning. Bringing it even smaller does bring more plus into the pupil, but sometimes you get to a point where the treatment zone is so small that we start having trouble correcting the full amount of myopia. There's just too much plus from the reverse curve, and it competes with the central flattening that we're getting for refractive error. So 5662, I think, is a pretty good place to be for better myopia control. And then, of course, there's also the option of low-dose atropine, which I've started some patients on. This is not a guarantee. I think this will help a little bit, but there are some patients who will still progress no matter what we do to their lens. And those are some patients that I think the low-dose atropine helps. So basically not much change to your most recent design, just reducing the OZ and IC. And as long as the post-wear topographies look centered, there's no need to change anything in the periphery. So hopefully this helps to get your patient more stable in terms of progression. Best of luck, and thanks for watching.